essentially buffs to not require 2 elements, just take C1. You want crit and defense shred, just take C2. Additional EM, just take C4. And the damage of a normal DPS, get up to C6. This makes Nahida who's already a strong character, even better, in addition to her scaling, which provides her with wonderful amounts of crit and damage bonus, because why not? She's incredibly difficult to replace. And I think her being released extremely early in the life cycle of Sumeru has kind of impacted the rest of the game, because our first quote-unquote brand new character was Tignari. Yes, he was added to standard, but even still, he was our brand new first one, our first 5-star, and even though he was run alongside Zhongli and we haven't seen his weapon run ever again, Kale was the 4-star. She was free. Similar to how we all now have Lynette for free. But in comparison to that, every other Dendro character hasn't compared. Sino came out before Nahida, but was limited and bound to Nahida because of the fact that he applies so much Electro, he wants Aggravate. And mind you, that was before we even discovered that Quick Bloom works great for him and Aggravate works better once you have something like C2. You want Nilo? Well, you want that application off field, and even though she can work without Nahida, Nahida is her best character to be paired with, because that means you can use Scale on her, use Burst on Xingqiu, and then your healer could be somebody like Yao Yao, but Nahida can be on field applying all the Dendro you need for the Bloom cores. And these are technically niche options, but they're options nonetheless. Even if we're comparing it to other units who I don't necessarily have. You want Al-Hytham? Well, Al-Hytham wants Nahida. Baiju is the only real exception, but Baiju isn't even supposed to be an off-field applicator. He's primarily just a healer and a shielder. He's a mix with Yao Yao and Kirara, which is fine given who he released between. But I do hate, and I do think a lot of individuals hate, Dendro as a whole, and not necessarily because of what it can do. Yeah, it's a strong elemental reaction, I get that, I understand that, but the problem is, Dendro initially came out and had such a wide gap between it and any other element. Why would you use Pyro and Vaporize when Dendro exists for Bloom cores, for Hyper Bloom, with the range of essentially something like those elemental reactions without any of the potentials of missing or anything else? Why would you use Freeze when a Hyper Bloom or just a standard Bloom team works? Why would you use Electro Charged when Aggravate works perfectly fine? And yet it boosted some of these older units, especially individuals like Kuki Shinobu, who I really think should have just been good on release and not required a new element to be released afterwards to boost her. And it made other passives like Yaimiko's a bit better, but I still do believe Nahida as a whole was released far too early for a Dendro unit of this caliber to be out, but at the same time, late enough that other units were still impacted by her just not existing at that point. And I think it dramatically changes the perception of Dendro and the perception of her, because a lot of people will say Dendro is broken, and it's a good reaction, I get it. But so many of those reactions depend on you having a good off-field applicator, and we don't have much of that. The Traveler isn't really the best. Kale has the option to miss somehow sometimes with her Boomerang. And so you're limited outside of that to Yao Yao, a great healer, Al-Hytham, who kind of wants her anyway, and Baiju. And I think that does work to its detriment. I think Nahida would have been fine, but even compared to the other Archons, she arguably is so good that it feels restrictive. Zhongli is good, but that doesn't necessarily mean other Geos are bad. Venti is good, but as we've seen before, you can have another unit who does a good job as well, and they can still compete in the same element. It's not necessarily like Venti's god-awful because Kazuha exists. No, they both have the separate niches. You're Raiden Shoguns, you have multiple other Electro units. You want Aggravate? You can go here. You want Raiden to perform off-field? Give her Dragon's Bane with EM build. You still have Fischl, who's great. Nahida has no close competition, and even though her banner was a while ago, we're going to be nearing that full year soon, and if she still has no competition after a full year of her release, it's going to feel very bad for anyone who wants to get into Dendro. If you like Nilo, if you like Sino, if you like Tignari, if you like Al-Hytham, you're going to feel like they're missing so much or very difficult to play because you likely won't be able to access their full potential because you didn't pull for this one lolly Archon. Is she cute? Yes. She has good art. She has a decent kit. It's very fun. If you hate her in a story, I'm not gonna lie, I still hate her in the story, but she's not necessarily being pulled, I think, for a lot of individuals because she's a cute character who you love and attached to the personality of. She's good, And so she's pulled. It's not a situation to where you're like, I love Yai, I'm gonna pull Yai. No, it's a situation to where I need Dendro application, I'm gonna pull Nahida, and then you skip out on other units. Next banner is Yoimiya and Raiden. And then we have Nahida and Yai. Even if you like Yai, Nahida is better for your overall accounts. Even if you like Yai, Nahida is better rather than getting Yai constellations. And I understand that may not be a bad thing to some people having a good unit to where you don't need to invest in others, but the point is to have options, and Nahida has had no good options released after her. Even if we're looking at before, yeah, you could use Tignari off field with Yai and that worked. You use Kale. After Nahida, Yao Yao was really the only good, applicable, and widely accessible character of the Dendro elements. Alhaitham's good, don't get me wrong, but Alhaitham serves one role, and that is to be a DPS or a driver for Dendro reactions. And so as a result, I'm not going to compare to him, because if you want to use Nilo or Sino, they're not going to work with him. I'm talking about supports, because that's what Nahida is, a support. Kaveh? Who uses Kaveh realistically? And this isn't to, I hate the character, but this isn't to hate on him, but how many of you legitimately would take Kaveh over an individual support that may work better for you? He has the ability to detonate Dendro cores, sure, but why not just, especially if you want to compare that on an Elo team, why not just use somebody else who can proc it more easily or brings more utility, like a Yao Yao? Baiju's a healer, great. Baiju now slides perfectly fine into a Sino team, but Sino's best team as of right now, I think, is Sino, Nahida, Baiju, Farina. It's still an expensive team, and Nahida is still great. Still to the extent to where, once again, you're inclined to pull her over any other new unit. And I don't know, I just don't like that feeling. I like Archons being good. A lot of the Archons are good. I don't like it when Archons get dethroned, but that's only realistically happened once. But Nahida feels like a whole different level, not necessarily compared to the Archons, because yeah, she's still good and so are they, but more so because she's good, and as a result of her being so good and her being so early, we haven't seen much competition develop. And it kind of irks me. But tell me your thoughts down below. I personally think she kind of ruined Dendro for a lot of people, myself included. But I know you may love the character and you may love what she does. Either way, I'll see you next time, and goodbye.